So I thought that this is a very good idea to discuss. And though I would have liked to be in front of every one of you in a meeting, in a seminar, but that's not possible. So this is the next best which is possible, and I'll try my best to give you some of my own experiences and my own knowledge. Are you able to see?
Yes, sir. Now it's presenting. Yes.
Okay, fine. So we get started with the lecture. I'm sorry for the slight delay
okay,
here.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm Vasudev Sirguri from the UGCDA Consortium for Scientific Research, Mumbai Center. We are situated at the Bhabha Atomic Research Center in Mumbai. And of course, you can see that this is my contact address and my email address. So you can always write to me for any information. So, so basically, I would like to tell you something about writing proposals, research proposals. So we deal with a certain kind of research proposals, but I would like to tell you more about the proposals which are submitted for uh, to major funding agencies like DST, etc. So what does it take to write a good, not just a good, but a winning proposal? So it is important that we need funding for our research, and so we need to write proposals, research proposals to these funding agencies. So not all universities are well funded in India. So depending on the requirements, the faculty writes research proposals and tries to get funding for their research work. So my plan of talk would be I discuss about different types of research proposals, then the various funding agencies or rather the major funding agencies in India. And then I would like to tell you something about what are the basic requirements to write a very successful or a winning proposal. So there are proposals which are mainly for equipment grants, and there are proposals which allow you access to mega scale facilities and other such mega scale resources. And then I will try to give you a little bit information about what are the facilities which are accessible at the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, Mumbai, through my institute, that is UGCDA Consortium for Scientific Research. And then I'll try to round up with a small summary. So when we come to the type of research proposals, they can be classified into two main categories as far as our Indian context is concerned. So we have proposals which require considerable amount of resources or funds in the form of equipment grants and materials for research, the raw materials or the chemicals, and computation time, where you have large computation facilities available and you need to book time. Then travel and fellowships for students and so on. Then there are a different category of proposals where there's not much accent laid on equipment grants, but these proposals allow you to access large-scale facilities like neutron scattering centers or synchrotron centers or accelerator centers and many such mega facilities. So these proposals, mind you, they don't give you much of funding for equipment, but they do allow you to access these large-scale facilities. They allow you to go to these large-scale facilities, do your work, and then come back. So they are also funding you in a way because these large-scale facilities take a lot of money to run. And so instead of giving you the money, they're putting money elsewhere and then allowing you to access those facilities. So, and these were proposals, again, in the Indian context, we have some of these large-scale facilities like the Neutron Scattering Center at BARC and the Indus Synchrotron facility at Indore, and we have some accelerator facilities at Indira Gandhi Center for Advanced Research, Kalpakam, and at the Variable Energy Cyclotron Center at Kolkata. Okay, so so what are the different funding agencies in India? Most of you are aware of these. Primarily, we have the Department of Science and Technology and the Science and Engineering Research Board (SERB), which gives which is one of the major public funding agency in the country. And DST, SERB, they give what are called the core research grants, the CRG. They also give startup research grants for new faculty. Then they have something called the Young Scientist Grants, and then they have something called the IRHPA, High Priority Area Grants, and many more subsections and different types of grants. They also fund international collaborations like the German DFG or DAAD. Then we have the IFCPAR or the Indo-French Center for Promotion of Research. And we have the Japanese JSPS, and there are many more which are based on individual countries. And these are international collaborations through DST, which are funded. And so they are also certain way of obtaining grants, research grants. Then we have this Department of Biotechnology, which is again a huge funding agency, and an enormously large number of funding programs under the DBT. But this is, of course, specific to biology, microbiology, and biotechnology. So then we have the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, and then we have our own University Grants Commission, UGC, which funds quite a number of projects. And then we have my own institute, the UGC JEE Consortium of Scientific Research, and also the Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research. With these two institutions, basically they grant access to national and international mega facilities. So these are the different kinds of funding agencies which are in India, and they are all, of course, public government funding agencies. And mind you, most of the research in the country here is funded by government. There are some minor grants or one or two private funding bodies which do fund some research, but that's a very, very small percentage of the entire funding which goes on in our country. Okay, so then we move on from this, and then let's see what are the main objective of a research proposal. Of course, as you all know, that the main purpose of a research proposal is to obtain research funding. But then, see, the problem is like this. The funding agency is sitting somewhere. They are a set of people who have all the money in their hands. So you need to convince these people that, look, I am presenting a research proposal which is going to give some fantastic results and of very high significance. So please give me some money. So then these funding agency basically has to be convinced by you to open up their purse and then put the money on the table. So to do this is not just good enough enough to have a good proposal. See, many of you do send, of course, do send good proposals. We also receive a lot of proposals and very good. But then when it's a question of a little bit which is available for everyone, and then you need to have a really great proposal to score over all other proposals. So at the outset, one has to have this in mind that, look, I must write a really, really great proposal. It's not just enough to have a good proposal. So you must have this outlook right at the beginning that, look, I must do whatever I can, spend whatever time I can, and then come out with a really great proposal which will go through the evaluation process, and then I get the sanction. So that is, as I said, you need to do this to convince the funding agency to give you the money. So then if you are in the place of the funding agency, so what does the funding agency look for in such a great proposal which would then convince them to give you the money? So the certain key points which any funding agency would look for is that first they will see whether the research problem is worth investigating or not. Then what could be the significance of the research proposal? What would be the value addition? Okay, what would be the new approaches in science which would be a result of this proposal? Okay. And what would be the scientific advancement which comes out of these proposals? Then sometimes it could be applications or technological applications. Okay. So what are the different applications which are going to come out of this proposal, and would they be relevant to the society at this point of time? So the societal benefit would also come in at this stage when evaluating a proposal, especially for technological applications. And then they will also try to see whether you're focusing on a specific subject area. And there are also certain proposal calls which are put out by these funding agencies, which are very specific to a certain subject area. As you all know, the country is now going through this current pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and you know that the Department of Biotechnology as well as DST, they have come out with very specific calls on proposals for COVID-19. So among you, if you're anyone who is into microbiology and things like that, so this is the right time to get into this business and then try to obtain funding or work on, say, COVID-19. So like that, there are many other subject areas which are very specific. So these proposal calls are sometimes very specific. They focus on a certain subject area, and so the agency looks for whether this proposal is on this particular subject area or not. Then, of course, what they look for, they hold all the money in their hands. So then if they want to give you the money, they also look for the paisa vasool. So how much value are they going to get back after giving you the money? So they, of course, look for the bang for the buck. So suppose you have, say, two proposals, one costing, say, 25 lakhs, another proposing 50 lakhs, but then both of them on similar outcomes, naturally, you know, where would the funding agency put their money? So then they will also try to look at what is the probability that the particular research proposal would actually succeed in achieving the objectives which it lays out in the proposal. So these are some of the key points which any funding agency would look for while evaluating research proposal. Then, as I said, they would like to see whether there's any outstanding science coming out of this proposal, either for academic benefit or societal benefit. Okay. Then they will also see how well the proposal is written in terms of its significance. So they will see whether there is a well-articulated statement on the significance of the project. Then they will also look at how the proposal is actually focusing on the core science. And then they'll see whether this particular research would provide some new advancement in the field or generate some new knowledge. So this is called what is called the gap statement. Okay, so that means, is the proposal going to fill up some gaps in the existing knowledge, or is it going to resolve some unsolved problem in science? Then, of course, comes the costing. They will see whether the proposal is appropriately budgeted, and is the scientific advancement or the proposed scientific advance, it is sufficient to justify the cost which has been asked in the proposal. Okay. Then, of course, they will also definitely would like to see at the likely impact the proposal would be having on the scientific field. Okay, so then most of the funding agencies, they have a certain format for writing these proposals, and then but mind you, for any research proposal there are certain unwritten rules or standard formats which everyone has to follow whether you like it or not. Then most of the funding agencies, they have very specific formats for filling up the research proposal, and they have certain guidelines. So it's very important. It's very important that you must stick to these kind of formats if you are given these formats, and also follow the guidelines which are put forward by the funding agencies. So that, of course, is that this goes really without any saying. Okay, so now let's get into the main structure of a research proposal. The very first thing, of course, one would see is the title, and it's always nice to have a catchy title because it's the first line which anyone looks at when a proposal is presented or sent to a funding agency. So it is very important that you think about the title of your proposal. It must be really attractive, and it must grab the attention of the person who sees it for the first time. Then, of course, you have an abstract, which basically puts together all the components of the proposal and in a very short and concise manner. Then, of course, you focus a little bit on the research problem that you would like to propose. Then comes the scientific background. So this is a very important part of the proposal. I'll deal with each of these sections separately. So the scientific background gives you the backbone for the proposal. So it's here that you have to put in all what has been already done in the field. Okay, so basically it comprises literature survey and things like that. And there are one or two important things we have to keep in mind in this scientific background, because that basically sets the tone for the next part. Okay, so next come the objectives of the proposal, what you're aiming to achieve by carrying out this research work, and how these objectives would result in what kind of outcomes, and what would be the significance of these outcomes. Then, of course, comes the methodology, a very important part of the whole thing, because this is where the whole bread and butter of the proposal lies. What you're looking for, what you're asking for, what the basic grant is for. So this is where the whole thing comes in. Okay. How you're going to use the grant, or how you're going to spend the grant, how you're going to carry out the proposal. And then the work plan. So each proposal must have a definite work plan. So this work plan is, 1 second, please. Yeah. So the work plan gives you a timeline for the project. And it's very important to have some realistic timelines on your project. Okay. Then, of course, what are the resources you currently have? And then finally, of course, what are the references you're referring to? Then the budget which you're proposing in your proposal, and then the CVs of the team of people who are involved in this proposal. So let's go through these topics one by one in a little bit of detail. So the abstract. So typically this is a half page or 300 words, and sometimes the format is already determined by the funding agency. Okay. Is it visible, please?
It's visible. I
Okay,
request
fine.
someone to turn off the mic.
Oh, it's okay. So typically there's a half-page paragraph, and here you need to basically summarize the research problem, the objectives of the proposal, then the methodology which you will be following, then the expected results and the significance, and the required resources. So the abstract is a tricky thing, because if you start out by writing the abstract first and then go on to, you can do that, go on to the rest of the proposal, but then you'll find out while writing rest of the proposal, there are certain things which have changed. So you need to go back, keep going back again and again to the abstract and then correcting it. So better you can leave this for the end, so that after you write the whole proposal, including the problem, research problem, objectives, methodology, results, significance, etc., and then get back to the abstract again, and then edit it accordingly, which will be the right, which will end up with the right size and the right effect. Okay, then we come to the research problem. So again, this is typically a half-page to one-page definition of the research problem. So this again, I'm giving you a very broad idea of the size here, but there could be some specific formats for certain funding agencies, which will determine that this should be the size of the this section. So what do you do here? So here basically you must remember that when you submit a proposal to a funding agency, the first persons who will look at your proposal are not the experts actually. They are the staff at the funding agency, and they may not be expert. They may be just bureaucratic people. So now these are the guys who will look at your proposal first. Of course, they have some idea, some grounding in this in these matters. So it has to be, this section has to be general enough for a non-specialist in the field to understand. Okay, so what is this whole thing about in a rough manner, so that they can actually redirect it to the right person for evaluation. Okay, so the first set of people who look at the proposal are the staff of the funding agency. So you should not confuse these people. So these people also must be made to understand what you're trying to talk about. Okay, so you should start with certain general statements and then slowly lead the person into the specific area of research which you would like to work on. And also you must keep in mind that the evaluation committee or the panel which is there in the funding agency, all the members may not be expert in your area. They'll be experts in different fields of research. And sometimes it may also happen that none of the members of the panel would be an expert in your specific area of research. Okay. So then one has to structure your research problem in such a manner that even a non-expert in the field would be able to appreciate the nature of your research problem. So you have to be very careful in how you actually write this research problem. So it's always good to have some general terms in the beginning which are understandable to most of the people, non-experts also, and then slowly introduce more technical terms which will make it more and more specific to your area of research. So then we come to the scientific background. So this takes up almost 2 to 3 pages in a typical research proposal. So here you have to give the current status of your research work, both the national scenario and the international scenario. Okay. Excuse me. Then comes the literature survey. So what has been done already so far and what has not been done so far. And here again, when you give this literature survey, obviously many of you would have already spent a number of years in research, so you must be already experts in your area of work. There's always sometimes a tendency, sometimes there's a tendency for people to talk more about their own work in literature survey. It's always good, of course, but then the committees which look into this, they are not interested in, okay, how much you have worked in this particular area all the time. Okay, so I mean, if you just put all your bulk of this literature survey would be on your own work, then they might ask you, okay, why should we fund your research? Okay, so you must have a balance here. So keep a balanced literature survey. Then comes what is called the gap statement. Now, this is a very, very important part of the proposal because this is the crux of the whole thing. So here you try to tell the committee or the funding agency how your research or your proposed research would fill the gaps in the existing knowledge in your area, or how this proposed research would result in certain scientific advances. So this is a very important statement. Okay. So you must devote at least 3-4 lines of a little more than that to explain this, what is called the gap statement. Here again, as I said, you must first use some general terms in the beginning for the non-expert in the committees, and then of course get into more and more technical aspects of the proposal. So what is this gap statement I was talking about? So this can be a very short paragraph. So this will tell you how the study would actually advance the understanding of a current scientific problem by filling in gaps which are existing in the knowledge at this point of time. Okay, or it can also resolve some currently unsolved problem. Now, when you say currently unsolved problem, I get reminded of a very great scientist of ours who said that in the history of science, we often find that the study of some natural phenomenon has been the starting point in the development of a new branch of knowledge. So this was the great Dr. Sir C.V. Raman. So you must also remember that the starting point in the development of a new branch is very, very important. So and when you write this gap statement, so you must be very careful to use what are called the negative sentences. So you must always say that this was not previously done, this was not previously known, and we are trying to solve this problem. We are trying to find out this problem. We are going to determine this problem. Okay, so this was not known earlier. This was not studied earlier. Okay, so this kind of statement must be made here. So, and you have to be very precise in making these statements and very definitive statements and on what has not been done. Okay, so the committee is not interested in knowing what has been done already or to the best of your knowledge what this is so and so, so and so. They are not interested in that. So you must make a very precise and definitive statement on what has not been done and we are going to do that. Okay. So basically this should not give rise to any doubt in the referees or the panel's mind about your own knowledge of the research or the uniqueness of the research problem which you are proposing. So then after this would then set the stage for the objectives of your proposal. Okay. So we come to the objectives. So here again, it's a very important section. And again, as I said, even a non-expert in the committee must be able to comprehend what are the objectives of your research proposal. Again, as I said, you start with a few broad general statements on how your research topic is relevant to the contemporary situation or issues or problems, and then state very clearly the objectives that are very specific to your study, very precise. You should be very precise, and then you should correspond to your intended results here. And the way you write these objectives, you must make very deterministic statements. So you should say to determine a previously unknown quantity, to determine, say, the quantum phase transition point, which is not known, or say to develop a device or to develop a particular facility, to develop an innovation, for example, or for theoreticians, you can say to solve a long-standing theoretical problem. So these kind of sentences must be used in the objectives part of your proposal. Okay. Then we come to the expected outcomes and significance of the research proposal. Okay, so the problem is like this. You have stated your objectives to the committee. So the committee will go through the objectives. They realize, why, yes, okay, these are the objectives of the proposal. But then, so what? So what if the objectives are like this? So what are they going to become? If this is the objective of your research, what is it going to result in? What is the expected outcome of it? What is the significance of this objective? That is very important. So you need to show how will these attained objectives or the achieved objectives will translate into the expected outcomes of your research proposal. So you have to show how would the scientific community benefit from the objectives of your proposal or the expected outcomes of your proposal. And then what would be the new developments or the new products or the new innovations that would result from your outcomes. And then here again, you must make very specific statements that the funding agency would be able to see the value of your research. What is the value addition? Failing which, your proposal, of course, would in all probability be rejected. So it's very important to spend time in this section and try to emphasize what is the significance of your research proposal. Okay. Then, of course, we come to the one main section, the methodology and work plan. So how you're going to carry out your research proposal. A very, very important thing. Okay. So then this will show how all your defined objectives, how they will be achieved. So here is where you put in or describe all the various experimental techniques or the theoretical methods or the analytical methods that you will be using in this proposed study. Okay. And mind you, when you so basically you say that, okay, I start by making say so and so material, then I'll use this particular experimental technique to characterize this particular aspect of the material, and then I go to the next experimental technique to characterize another part of the another characteristic of the material, and then look at the outcome and go back again and things like that. Okay. So this is the methodology which you'll be following. So here you have to describe what you actually plan to do, okay, not what you have already done in your work, okay, and what you might possibly do. Nobody is interested in knowing what you might possibly do. They want to know what you'll actually do. Okay. So here, of course, you have to use future tense, what you will be doing, and passive voice. One example here, which is in my field of research, for example, is say neutron diffraction patterns will be measured at say PD3 diffractometer at Dhruva reactor, and they will be analyzed using a full prop software like that. And then, of course, here if you are going to use any novel techniques which are not hitherto described earlier, then these should be, of course, described in more detail than these previous experimental methods which you have described. So any new methods or novel techniques which you will be using, you must lay some stress on this and explain to the committee in detail about this part. Okay, so that's the methodology. And then the next sequence would be the work plan. So the work plan, again, is an important timeline of the whole project. So the work plan shows the sequence in which the entire proposal would be carried out. See, as I said, there could be n number of methods, experimental methods, which will be used to obtain or with certain specific interrelationship or the sequence in which these methods would be used. As I said, method A to method B to method C you'll be using, but then somewhere in between you do not obtain the expected outcome, so you may have to go back to expect method A or method B and do something else, and then again go to method C. So there is a certain interrelationship between the different techniques which we're using and different aspects of the work which you'll be doing. So you need to do this in a very comprehensive manner, and then build this into the work plan which will be showing. One of the best ways to show this is what is called a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is nothing but showing a timeline of the whole project against the different aspects of the projects, or the different parts of the project. So this is a typical example of a Gantt chart, where you have activity on the left, you have, say, literature review, ordering of materials, experiment 1, experiment 2, analysis, etc., etc. And this is the timeline which you have, year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. So how much of the time you'll be using for this particular aspect of your work. So this is what is called a typical Gantt chart. So this is a very convenient way of putting across in a single picture the entire work plan of your proposal. Okay, and here, as I said, again in the work plan, you always use the future tense and the passive voice. Okay. Then, of course, come the resources. So resources mean what are the resources which are available at hand with you. And these could be material resources, these could be your intellectual resources, and various other things. So that is the expertise which is available with you, the facilities which are available with your institution, which are allowed to be used by you, by your institution for your proposed research program. So you need to write down here that, look, I'll be using this particular facility in my research lab, in my institute for this proposed work. And then if you're writing international proposals, it is also important to describe a little bit about what is your institute also, because they may not know. For a national funding agency, almost all the research institutions are known. But for an international proposal, a foreign country, they would like to know what is your, who are you, and what is your institute also. So then you must also give 1 or 2 lines about the different people who are the team which you are going to present in the proposal. You have the PI, you may also have certain co-PIs in the proposal. So who are these people? I mean, just a very short 1-line description. The detailed description will come later. But here you can just present as a resource, who are these people? Who is the PI? Who is the co-PI 1? Who is the co-PI 2? Etc. Then, of course, come the references. So you must list all the cited references in the proposal very carefully. And it's good to spend a little time here, because you must use a very consistent style. This very often I find when people write references, they all have haphazard way of writing the references. So one reference, the next reference, the style becomes totally different. Okay. So this is not a desirable condition, because a person who is reading your research proposal always looks for consistency. So you must have a consistent style of writing the references. If the funding agency has already specified, like many journals do for papers, that you must have this particular format for writing the references, then of course you must stick to that, and you must put your references in that prescribed style. So any irregular style or a poorly organized reference list will give a very wrong impression about your style of working for the committee. Who is this guy who doesn't know, okay, this to that, it keeps on changing, what is this? Okay. So that's not a desirable impression to be created in a committee. So you must be careful, you use a consistent style or a already prescribed style of citing references. Okay, then finally we come to the budget. Okay, so very important, because you're asking for funds, you're asking for money. So when you present the budget, most of the funding agencies, they actually already give you a template on how your budget is to be presented. Like they have one section for salaries, then they have one section for the equipment grants, they have another section for travel, and then they have another section for overheads, for example. And then again, in the equipment section, they have again how much of this grant would be in foreign exchange, how much of foreign exchange component which you will be requiring for your project. So all these are important. So they will all usually they give you these templates for writing the budget, and you must make it a point to follow this particular template. So, and you must stick to that, and then do a proper costing. You must spend time in trying to find out how much things would cost, and then put those realistic uh, estimates, budget estimates. And for heaven's sake, do not unnecessarily over budget your proposal. Okay, if you do an over budget, then see, the people sitting in this evaluation panels, they are smart. I mean, they have gone through hundreds of these proposals. They know what each and everything would cost, and they would immediately recognize that if you're going to unnecessarily over budget something, it is something which is not correct. Okay, and they will immediately, it will give a wrong impression, and they'll eventually push down the proposal in the rating. So please don't do this kind of thing. And because there's always a tendency, look, suppose I need say 25 lakhs. Okay, let me ask for say 50 lakhs. So I may get at least 25 lakhs. That's not the way it works. Okay, so please don't over budget. Do an exact proper costing of your budget. So, and after doing that, you must also try to justify why you need this money. And this is especially for equipment grants, which is typically this is where many of us get stuck. So that's the major chunk of the funding. And so you need to justify why you want to acquire a particular piece of equipment. Because the funding agency is always trying to look to cut costs. So if you find, if they find out that, look, this particular equipment is available next door, the university next door, sitting right over there in your own place, then why should we fund you? You please go there and do your work. But then, so you need to justify why you want to buy that particular piece of equipment, and what are the reasons for this, and you have to give a very, very convincing justification here. And as I said, this comprises a major chunk of the requested money. So, and especially when you have very high-end equipment, now you know as well, any of this high-end equipment, when most of it is imported in the country, costs nothing less than say 2 crores or 3 crores of rupees. And it's very difficult to achieve this kind of monies. And unless you explain in detail and justify very well why you need this kind of money, it's very difficult to get grants for this kind of equipment. And of course, many funding agencies, they have certain limits for certain proposals or class of proposals. So obviously, you must keep yourself to within these limits which are imposed by the funding agency. Then, of course, you have to list the CVs of all the investigators in the proposal, the whole team, the PI, the co-PI 1, co-PI 2, PI, co-PI 3, etc. And usually formats are given for this because it may happen that a particular PI is a very, very famous scientist, and his CV would go into, say, 50 pages. But then obviously you cannot put those 50 pages in your proposal, okay? So usually they have a format for this, which may limit the CV to say 1 page or even half a page sometimes. So you have to do it as per the format which is given by the funding agency. Okay, so this about tells you something about how a research proposal is to be formulated and worked out. Okay, so now what are the common pitfalls which people commit while writing research proposals? First is statements which are out of place. As I said, it's very important to think about each section carefully. Obviously, you cannot talk about literature survey in expected outcomes or significance of your project, or you cannot put the expected outcomes in the literature survey part of the proposal. So you have to put the statements in the right places. Okay? You should not put statements out of place. This very commonly happens in many research proposals. And then the gap statement, which I talked about, okay, that's a very important statement. It tells you how your research proposal is going to actually fill the gaps in the existing knowledge. So that's a very important statement, and sometimes people don't bother about it. They don't give this vital piece of information in their proposals. And very often, sometimes I would say people are not very clear about the objectives which they want to achieve out of the research project. This very often happens with people who are just interested in getting some money, and they're not really worried about what are the objectives, etc. That doesn't work. So you must be very clear in what the objectives of the proposal. Mind you, your proposal is not the only proposal which lands up with the funding agency. There are hundreds of proposals which would land up. And imagine the work of the people who actually screen these proposals, and then see, you should not give the slightest opportunity for the committee or the people who are screening the proposal to reject your proposal. Okay, so that is something which you have to keep in mind all the time. So, and again, as I said, the expected outcomes and the significance of the research proposal is not brought out clearly, and this also happens sometimes. No proper work plan. This again indicates the haphazard nature in which you might work. If you don't give a proper, clear work plan, the impression that it would convey is that you are not a very methodical person. Okay. So reject the proposal. So this again should not happen. So you must have, as I said, a proper work plan. Then proportionality in the sections. Okay. As I said, the methodology and the work plan form the bread and butter of the whole proposal. So you must allocate more than 60% of the size of your proposal to these two aspects, okay, the methodology and work plan. Okay, but then the background, it should not be too large. There are certain proposals where you have almost 60% of the proposal is all just background study. That doesn't work. Okay. So you must be careful and keep your sections proportional. So as I said, the methodology and work plan should comprise more than 50% of the proposal. And these are certain musts. Okay. So the proposal should be able to convince the committee that it will deliver the result. Okay. So that's a very important thing. Then you must also check the abstract, as I said, at the end of the whole exercise before you submit, and make sure that all the key points are there in the abstract. And the literature survey must be relevant to the proposed work, nothing extra, nothing which is left out otherwise. Okay, so it has to be absolutely relevant to the proposed work. And the gap statement or the gap paragraph which I talked about, that must be there, without which the proposal may not be granted. So you must have very clear objectives, very clear outcomes, expected outcomes, and then the significance. And in the significance, you also have a part of significance is the impact your research work is going to have on the scientific community or on your peers, etc., or on the technology which is available at this point of time. So the impact also is very important. It is included in the significance. And the detailed work plan is a must, and you must have a fully justified budget. So that comes to the end of the proposals which I talked about in the first class, the first type of proposals where you're asking for a lot of money. Then I talked briefly about certain proposals. I hope I have another 5 minutes time, Dr. Pillai. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir. Please
Yeah.
continue, sir.
Yeah. So
Yes,
now
you
I
can
come
continue.
to the
Yes.
second class of proposals, which are basically for accessing large-scale mega facilities like neutron scattering facilities, synchrotron facilities, or accelerator facilities available at different parts of the country. Of course, in our country, we have just one neutron scattering center, that is at Bhabha Atomic Research Center, where we have the Dhruva reactor. And we have only one synchrotron center, which is the Indus 1 and Indus 2 at Indore, the Rajaramana Center for Applied Technology. then Center for Advanced Technology, and then we have the accelerators at Calcutta as well as at IGCAR Kalpakam. So we have the variable energy cyclotron at VCC Calcutta, and then we have a low energy accelerator at IGCAR. So the proposals for these are slightly different, but of course the basic structure would remain the same. But then for accessing these kind of large scale facilities, you don't require 10 to 15 pages of proposals. Okay, so here they are much short as compared to the other ones. So here, in these proposals, you are not being granted a huge chunk of money. You are basically being facilitated to access these large-scale facilities. The money has been put in this large-scale facility, so you are given access to use these facilities or use these resources for your research work. So in the Indian context, we have, as I said, the Indus 2 at RRK at Indore. They have a number of beam lines which are available and operational already. All the green ones are already operational, and already a lot of scientific output is coming out from these beam lines. And then we have the Dhruva reactor at BARC for the neutron scattering facility. So this is the reactor core and the reactor. So these are all the instruments, neutron scattering instruments, which are located all around the reactor. So these neutron scattering instruments are available. They are the national facility now. They are called the National Facility for Neutron Beam Research, NFNBR, and they are all available to the universities and research community in the country through our UGCDA consortium. In one way, they are also available through other routes like the BRNS, for example, of DAE. So this is the Dhruva reactor. So I will just tell you, because I work here at the center, I will try to give you a little bit information about the neutron beam facility at Dhruva reactor. So here is this suite of neutron scattering instruments which have been basically developed by BARC. And here we have also contributed in our way and developed one high resolution powder neutron diffractometer with some certain special sample environment. And we have set this up in collaboration with certain universities. And this is now operational and very high in demand all the time. And there are also facilities for neutron activation analysis. So this is a view of the high resolution neutron powder diffractometer set up by my center. So this a little bit about my institute. Most of you probably know already about our institute. So UGC is the University Grants Commission, DA is the Department of Atomic Energy Consortium for Scientific Research. So this has been set up to promote, encourage, and support research using mega facilities among universities and other research institutes across India. And we facilitate access to the neutron beam facilities at Dhruva reactor BARC, Indus synchrotron at RRK at Indore, the cyclotron at VCC Kolkata, the low energy accelerator at IGCAR Kalpakam. We also set up very high-end research facilities at all our centers. We have basically 3 centers, Indore, Bombay, and Calcutta, and a node at Kalpakam. And there are very high-end research facilities which have been set up at these centers basically for the utilization by university scientists, and they are all available free of charge. So in this process, we hope that it adds value to the research carried out in our universities and help in the realization of novel scientific ideas. So how do these projects or proposals work? So we call them what are called the collaborative research schemes. So these are basically 3-year term proposals which are invited from university users. And as I said, these proposals do not have any equipment component. We just give usually a student, provide a student fellowship and a very, very small amount for some small contingencies and small chemicals, nothing major. We don't expect to expect you that we will fund your chemicals and major chemicals and things like that. No. And the proposal for this, the proposal format is quite similar to what has been described earlier, but in a very, very concise form. And this is available at our website, www.csr.res.in. So these proposals are to be presented before a user committee, which would then evaluate and then recommend sanction of this proposal, after which you'll get or you'll be allocated beam time on all these facilities which I mentioned. So this, you must remember that beam time is very, very expensive. It's not cheap. Okay, so that's how the funding part is taken care of. Okay. Then we have also international access through the JNCSR at Bangalore, and there are certain very specific institute collaborative tie-ups, rather country-to-country tie-ups between India and UK and India and Italy and India and Japan, where Springgate is the access to the Springgate synchrotron at Japan. Then ISIS-RAL is the pulse neutron facility at UK and UK, and Elettra is another synchrotron, the Italian synchrotron facility. And these are available for Indian users through, again, a proposal format. So you have to submit proposals whenever there are specific proposal calls for these facilities. And again, these are reviewed, they are subject to international peer review because you are using international facilities. And the successful proposals, they are allotted beam time on these facilities. You're given travel funding to go to these facilities, stay there, do your experiments and come back. As I said, there is very, very intense competition for beam time at these facilities. And again, these proposals really, really need to be great in order to get accepted. So I will try to wind up my talk. Proposal writing is really serious business. So any faculty, a serious faculty who's interested in doing serious research work would be spending quite a bit of his time in writing proposals. And a lot of time is required, as I said, for writing good proposals. So you must allot some time for this. Make sure that whatever you write is a very, very good proposal. So as I said, a very well articulated research proposal will always grab attention and enable you to have a higher chance of getting the funds. So as I said, good thinking and good writing always go hand in hand. So you must always try to write great proposals rather than just good proposals. And definitely outstanding proposals will always get funded. So thank you for your attention, and I wish all of you to stay safe at your places till this current problem is over. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such an informative session. I request Anish sir to carry on now. Anish sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
I, Dr. Anish Sharma, in charge principal of School of Sciences, on the behalf of PPSU University, express profound gratitude to our expert speaker, Dr. Vasudeva Siliguri sir, for conduction of such an informative webinar for all the participants, which includes faculty, scientists, and researchers across India. I thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge and views on the topic, and hope each participants have got benefited from the webinar and will definitely get a grant in near future. Thank you, sir. And I invite you to visit our university after the COVID pandemic is gone. Thank you again, sir. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. You're most welcome.
I request all the participants to ask their questions either through chat or one by one to Siriguri sir.
Yes, I would like to say something. I'm Professor Sagar Desai from the Faculty of Architecture from the same university. Sir, it was a very informative lecture. Today I have also enjoyed.
Thank you.
And sir, I would also like to meet you when this pandemic is over, like Professor Sharma said. So most welcome, sir, to our university.
Definitely. Thank you. A question here asking, is a PhD necessary for submitting a proposal? Yes, you must be already a faculty member of a research institute or a university to submit a proposal and obtain grants. Sometimes, of course, just let me complete. The question, of course, was a PhD necessary for submitting a proposal? Of course, the first answer would be no, because many people in engineering institutes, they may not have a PhD, but yet they are welcome to submit proposals. The only condition is that you must be a permanent faculty member, or sometimes a fellow who is having at least a 3 or 5 year contract term with a particular university or a research institute. Yes.
Yes, sir. And on behalf of Dr. Sudha Sahai, as she has asked one question in chat, she has two questions. For technology-based project, how to explain the market strategy and commercialization of the end product? And second question, in case of rejection of their project, how to secure their proposed idea, which can be stolen by others?
Yes. Yeah. Of course, when you talk about market strategy in technology, of course, I'm not a technologist, but then the basic principles are still same. When it comes to technological innovations, of course, a part of a research proposal or the significance of a research proposal, it already builds in, especially for technological proposals, how you'll be able to reach to your audience. So your audience, you mean that, I mean that the final, the benefiters of your research. Okay, so that has to be already built in into your technology-based projects. And then for this, of course, you need to go out and talk to your audience, that is, talk to your peers in the field of research. Yeah. And the other thing was, how do you protect your idea? Okay. Well, here again, it's like we believe that our funding agencies comprise honorable people, who will not do these kind of tricky things. And plagiarism is something which can be easily caught out, and usually people do not risk in doing this kind of thing. They're not, I would say, nobody would play with a proposal which has been submitted to a national funding agency. But all the same, one has to be, of course, careful and protect your ideas. Yes.
There are two more questions from Dr. Rimya Vardarajan and Dr. Seema Bellorkar, sir. They are asking that is the instrument facility available for life sciences and funding available for life sciences people?
Yeah. Okay. At the moment, not at BRC through our institute, but of course, the instruments can always be available on a one-to-one collaborative basis, no issues. You can write to us if you are interested in linking up with some life sciences people at BARC. We can always help you to do that. But of course, you may not be able to get funding directly for this particular proposal. We have not yet, our main intention or main accent at BARC, at our center at BARC, is on neutron scattering facilities and condensed matter research. A part of it is what is called soft condensed matter, where some biological systems are studied. And but we can always help you to get in touch with the right people at BRC. And one more thing, We have a center at Kolkata, which also works on certain topics in life sciences like radiation biology and certain related fields. So you can always approach our Kolkata center to find out whether they have any fields of research which are similar to your field of research, and then link up with them. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Dr.
Yeah.
Paresh Khanna from Arc University.
Yeah.
I have a simple question related to the sample proposals. I belong to computer science, so we are seeking for the sample proposals for the fields like computer science. Can we have any resources for that?
For computer science, of course, I don't know exactly what you would like to propose. Whether you're proposing to set up a computation facility, or you're trying to propose time on a computation facility. Can you just explain what you're trying to ask for?
For the computing facility, as of now, AI is in a moving way. So our department is going to have some research contribution to the India or the world.
I think yes.
We are we
Yes.
are seeking for sample proposals.
I think there are certain proposal calls in your area of research at the DST. Yes, not of course at our institute at BRC, but I think DST definitely has certain proposal calls very much related to your area of research. Yes, so you should try to contact the Department of Science and Technology or look into their website for your kind of proposals.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So there is one more question.
Yep.
From Dr. Bhakti Hirani. Can the life science people use the instruments available at UGC DAE Mumbai Center? Actually, this is the same question what was asked earlier. And one of the participant asked that what is the name of the center in Kolkata?
It's the same name, which is called the UGCDA Consortium of Scientific Research, Kolkata Center. So for biological systems, unfortunately, we don't have much of equipment. Okay, if you can let me know what kind of equipment you need. See, we have a light scattering facility at our center here, which is used by a number of life sciences people, the biology people. They come and keep using this facility. So it depends on which kind of facility you would like to utilize. And some facilities are available at our Kolkata center. And BARC on its own, of course, has a huge life sciences department and a number of facilities which are available, which are not accessible through us, but I can always provide you with the links so that you can directly speak to the concerned people at BRC in order to collaborate. Yes.
Okay, anyone else having any questions? You can turn on your mic and ask questions directly to sir.
Testing and the research for biofuels. So if you can be more specific in what you need for testing in the field of biofuels. So you need to be a little more specific in what you would like to utilize or which kind of technique you want to use. Then I can answer your question. Engine performance. Sorry, we don't have any facility to test the engine performance, but I am sure, again, TST has certain sections in its programs which are related to automobile industry, etc. And I'm sure that there are certain calls over there. Next, please.
Is there any question? Anyone?
Is it always necessary PI must have background research in the same field? Well, when you present a research proposal, obviously you're presenting something which you have knowledge of. If you are, say, a physicist working on, say, a field of soft condensed matter, for example, or say you're working in the field of, say, magnetic materials, obviously you cannot try and submit a proposal in, say, mutation in certain kinds of cells. It's totally out of the area. So when the PI naturally has to be connected with the research proposal, his area of research has to be similar to whatever he is trying to propose. Otherwise, how will you be able to carry out the proposal? How will you be able to achieve the objectives and the expected outcomes if you are not in the same area of research?
Any more questions?
For break in career, sorry.
Woman scientist, I think, sir. The question is about that.
Sorry, I missed the question. What,
Yeah,
break in career?
Break in career for WSB. Break in career should be calculated from PhD thesis submission date or viva voice date.
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of this. I have never faced this problem, so I'm sorry. I'll try to find out if possible and then get back to you. Yeah, this can co-PI or a mentor be a retired professor? Yes, the co-PIs, the conditions on co-PIs are not that rigid. Again, these are specific to the funding agencies. Some funding agencies, of course, they insist that the whole team which is a part of the proposal has to be either on permanent roles or on a permanent contract with a particular institution. But some institute, like for example, our own institute, we don't insist that the co-PI has to be a working person. It can always be a retired person, because the project is mainly run by the principal investigator, not the co-investigator. So certain funding agencies, they allow this, that the co-PI need not be a working person. It can be a retired person also. No issues.
Okay. Any more questions? Anyone?
Sir, one more question, sir. So, for a research scholar,
can you identify yourself, please?
Myself, Dr. Paresh Tanna, sir, from ARC University.
Okay.
Sir, a research scholar proposal can be put for funding, and if it is yes, then by what name? Like from a research guide or with the research scholar?
No, research scholars cannot present a proposal directly. They have to be a part of the proposal through the guide, who is also, the guide has to be a permanent member of a institution. So the proposal has to come through the guide, not the research scholar. Research scholar will always be a part of the work plan. He is not part of the proposal.
Thank you, sir.
Can we have two co-PI from different research disciplines?
Yes, of course, you can have, but of course they must have some common thread of research which connects them together. Okay, they cannot be totally different areas of work without any connection at all. They must have some connection with whatever research proposal they are putting forward.
Okay, anyone having any questions?
Yes, it is usually regular and permanent faculty have to submit proposals, or those of you who have what are called as NPDF or certain Inspire grants, etc., who are on a 3-year or a 4-year contract with DST or such agencies, they can of course also submit proposals. but again, not to all agencies. To certain categories of proposals, they can submit. Even temporary employees or faculty on short-term contracts with institutes.
So one question I have that can UGC DS Kothari postdoctoral fellow can also opt for can submit a proposal, or only DST postdocs can submit?
I think you can do that because DS Kothari fellowship is for 3 years or something like that.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah,
UGC is any
Yes.
woman fellowship or anything.
Yes.
Can they also submit?
Yes, I guess you can always submit, but as I said, you see, the issue is like this. When such a person submits a proposal, it's very likely that you are on a contract, a short-term contract for 3 years on a postdoctoral fellowship. The moment, of course, you get a position somewhere else, you are quite likely to leave. And this could be quite away from the place wherever you're working. And such a situation, it will create a problem for the funding agency because it has to, again, go behind you wherever you're going to. So when you are in such a situation, it's always better to team up. You see, there's one aspect which I didn't say in my presentation. Collaboration gives you a lot of results. It's always good to collaborate with people. You have a team together of different people and try to work together. That will fetch you much more than if you approach anyone singly. So it's always good to have a good team of people with different departments or even different universities. So if you can come together and put forward a very comprehensive proposal, a well-articulated proposal, that would be really appreciated because you're, of course, in this manner, you're trying to save money and more people are getting benefited by the funding. So if you can team up with people, that will be very nice. So if you are an NPDF or something like that, it's always good to team up with another faculty member and then present your proposal.
Thank you, sir. One more question is there, sir. Nowadays, funds are not given to basic research. Why only applied work is given priority, sir?
I don't think that's correct. Funds are also given for basic research. And of course, you see, whenever, as I said, the funding agency opens up the purse, he is always looking for what I said in a light manner, paisa vasool. So when he pays you money, he wants to know in what form he's going to get back that investment. So it's very, of course, very typical in Gujarat, you see, when you put money, you need to always looking for how you get the investment back. So in basic research, the issue is that what are the deliverables? See, if you are very clear about the expected outcome and the significance of the expected outcome, if it is going to really make a mark in the field of research and the society, there's no reason why basic research proposals will not get funded. Okay. So there's no problem. So it all depends on how you articulate the proposal. You must make it so clear and give an expected outcome which is a benefit to society. Then there's no problem. So in this manner, the application-oriented proposals, they put forward this idea that, look, we are going to deliver this particular product. So there's already something which is seen at the end of the proposal, okay, or foreseen at the end of the project. So that way, people have this tendency, oh, look, he's going to develop a fantastic battery for me, so I want to put the money there. Okay. So it's a question of perception among people and on how much of the investment is going to come back to the government. Okay. Yeah.
So one more question is there. What is the optimum allowed budget? And one more question, that can any temporary faculty can apply as a co-PI? two questions are there, sir.
Yes, the second question I have already answered. Temporary faculty, postdocs on term contracts, they can always become co-PIs, no problem at all. And the first question is that what should be the budget?
Yes.
See, this is difficult to answer just like that. Okay, so as I said, the budget it depends on what you actually are looking for in your research proposal. If your research proposal basically revolves around a certain equipment, you need a grant for purchasing or acquiring or procuring a particular kind of equipment, and of course you have to put that costing into the budget. Say 25 lakhs, your equipment is going to cost 25 lakhs or 50 lakhs. So you have to put a budget of that 50 lakhs for the equipment itself. And of course, nobody is going to give you 50 lakhs just like that from the pocket. So you have to give a full justification on how you're going to spend that 50 lakhs and in a meaningful manner. So how will that equipment which you're going to buy is going to deliver the research outcome which would be benefit to others, not just yourself. So that's the way you have to justify a budget. Yeah.
So one more question is there, and I think we will stop the discussion with this.
Okay.
Is necessary for institute from which we are applying to have 2F and 12B status?
That is desirable because see, UGC has tightened up many of its rules and regulations. It's always good to have those certifications because then things become easy. So once you have, say, a 12B certification from the UGC, we know that you're a part of the whole system. If you're not, then you're not part of the whole, the basic system. So then we need to look into the other aspects because see, this is all public money. This is not something which someone is doing from his pocket. This public money. When public money is put somewhere else in a particular institute, one has to make sure that this public money is well spent for the society. Okay, so that's the basic bottom line. So one has to be clear about it. So it is always good to have these mandatory recognitions which UGC demands from the institutes. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so I thank all. Okay, one more question is there. If yes, many government colleges do not have this.
Yeah, you can always team up. Again, come back to this term collaboration. Please try to collaborate with others. Please try to collaborate with universities. Please try to impress upon, say, a person who is in a university close to you, or your friend or someone. Try to team up with people and then present a collaborative proposal. That would have more weightage than a proposal which is singly presented.
Okay, so with this, sir, let us end our today's webinar. And I thank you once again for such an informative session. We have learned a lot, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Yes.
very
Thank you,
much
sir.
for your patience.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir. Thank you.
And I thank all the
Bye-bye.
participants also who have given their time and have attended the webinar. Thank you so much.
Yes, we can all now go and have our tea. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Please fill the feedback form also.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.